Can Glover once again shock the world and beat Yuri Prochazka? With UFC 275 right around the corner and many eyeballs being on this matchup between Glover and Yuri, some are wondering whether Glover could actually defend his belt in this matchup, although he is an underdog. But quickly before we get the video started, for those of you who may not know, I'm Juicy MMA, I make opinionative MMA content, and if you guys enjoy videos similar to this, hit that subscribe button, that like button, and that post notification bell. But anyways, let's get into it. The story of Glover Texeira has been amazing. The fact that he was able to rework his game over the past few years and focus a lot more on his strengths, which is his ground game and specifically his jiu-jitsu, has proven to be very successful for him. As he's currently on a 6-fight winning streak, and of course in his previous matchup against Jan Blachowicz, he won the belt at the age of 42, which is just so inspiring and so incredible to see. But also when you consider that most people thought Jan Blachowicz was going to absolutely run through Glover, it kind of just tells you that you can never underestimate him. But now in his upcoming matchup against Yuri Prochazka, although he's not necessarily a huge underdog, he is an underdog, and I would say the majority of the people out there think Yuri Prochazka is going to win this matchup. But now let's quickly look at Glover's game to see what he does well and how he could potentially win this matchup. Now starting with Glover's stand-up, he definitely doesn't have bad stand-up by any means. He definitely has some pretty nice boxing as well as decent kicks, but when you compare it to a guy in Yuri Prochazka, it certainly is a disadvantage for Glover. And I would say even besides the skill, the biggest disadvantage for Glover is the speed. Yuri is just going to be so much faster than Glover on the feet, and if the fight were to stay on the feet for the entire time, it would definitely be a big disadvantage for Glover, at least in my opinion. So it's no surprise the method to victory for Glover is definitely going to be to take the fight to the ground. But it's not going to be easy because Yuri certainly has pretty good takedown defense. But if Glover is able to take the fight to the ground, I think he would be very successful in that, as he does have phenomenal jiu-jitsu and phenomenal ground game in general, and vice versa, Yuri doesn't necessarily have the best jiu-jitsu / ground game. Because in the past, when Yuri gets taken to the ground, he tends to give his back up in an attempt to get back to his feet, which if he does in this matchup against Glover, the fight is probably going to be over at that point. But if the fight gets to the ground, in my opinion, I think Glover will be able to get to a good position relatively easily, whether he's looking for a submission to end the fight right there, or he's looking for the position in order to throw ground and pound shots and potentially end the fight like that, or maybe just win the round. And I think in some sense, this is kind of a very similar fight to Charles Oliveira and Justin Gaethje, in the sense that if the fight stays on the feet, it's probably going to be Yuri Prochazka's fight, but if the fight goes to the ground, it's probably going to be Glover Texeira's fight, which was exactly what I was saying in the matchup between Charles and Gaethje. If the fight went to the ground, Charles was going to win that fight. If the fight was on the feet, Justin Gaethje would probably have more success, although obviously Charles Oliveira is a lot better on the feet compared to Gaethje, as Glover is compared to Yuri. So I think in this fight, even more so than the matchup between Charles and Gaethje, it's going to matter even more where the fight takes place. Now, one positive that I wanted to touch upon with Glover on the feet is due to the fact that he's so much better on the ground, and specifically in terms of his jiu-jitsu, there is a possibility that Yuri would focus too much on his takedown defense and on his ground game as a whole, and not necessarily focus on his stand-up as much as he should. And there is a possibility that he could get caught at times. And I think we kind of saw this somewhat in the matchup between Glover and Jan Blachowicz, as Glover did catch Jan one time in that fight, and due to that was able to take the fight to the ground and was able to finish the fight. And we also saw something similar in the matchup between Conor and Khabib, as Khabib was able to catch Conor one time in that fight. And this is classic striker versus wrestler, where if the striker is too focused on the wrestling, they're not necessarily focused enough in terms of the stand-up and in terms of the striking, and there is that possibility that they could get caught. So of course there is a possibility that Glover could have success on the feet if Yuri is way too focused on his takedown defense. But now let's quickly look at a couple different things that Yuri Prochazka does very well that could potentially give some trouble to Glover. So obviously Yuri's stand-up is probably going to give some issues to Glover Texeira, but that's something we already touched upon. But another thing that I wanted to talk about is at times Glover is a little too predictable when he shoots in for shots, and if he's too predictable, predictable and doesn't set up his shots when shooting in to go for a takedown on Jiri Prochazka, and Yuri's able to pick that up relatively easily, he could easily just fire in a knee perfectly timed, and it would probably knock out Glover Texeira and the fight would be over at that point. So from Glover's standpoint, he certainly needs to set up those takedowns a little bit better than he has done at times in the past. But obviously, in terms of the stand-up, besides even the speed, Jiri does a phenomenal job with his boxing, with his kicks. He has phenomenal elbows, as he recently did just get a spinning elbow, and overall he's just extremely versatile on the feet and just gives a ton of different looks that Glover would need to focus on the feet. And there is also a possibility, based upon the fact that Jiri has pretty good takedown defense, that Glover would go in for a few different shots and not be able to take down Jiri, or wouldn't be able to hold him down. And if that were to be the case, there's also a possibility that Glover would get discouraged at that point. And if that were to be the case and the fight were to stay on the feet, it probably wouldn't last much longer at that point, and Jiri would probably get a knockout, as he typically does in most of his fights. So the keys to this fight are honestly pretty simple. If the fight stays on the feet, Jiri Prochazka is probably going to have the advantage, and honestly he's probably going to find the knockout, as Glover doesn't necessarily have the best chin, as well as Jiri is obviously more skilled, has better length, and has better speed. But if Glover is able to take the fight to the ground, he's probably going to have a lot of success in terms of finding the submission and ending the fight right there, or just finding the position and throwing ground and pound shots and maybe ending the fight like that, or just winning the round by having control and throwing ground and pound shots on top. So in my opinion, I think this is a very interesting matchup, and I am very excited to see what happens in this fight. But in terms of my official prediction, I could easily see this fight going either way, but although I made this video about Glover, I think Jiri Prochazka is probably going to get this victory. But of course, if the fight does go to the ground, I fully expect Glover to take this win. But one thing that I will say is I think this fight is going to end relatively quickly, and honestly, I see this fight ending in under 2 rounds. But we'll see what happens in this matchup. But anyways, let me know what you guys think in the comments. Do you think Glover Texeira has a possibility of winning this fight, or do you think Jiri Prochazka is going to take the win? But anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and if you did enjoy, check one of these 2 videos popping up now, and until the next time, peace out guys.